Tonight, questions for the Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak rejects calls for an election and to sack his Home Secretary.
Our mandate is based on a manifesto that we were elected on to remind him an election that we won and they lost.
Also making the headlines, a warning that thousands of police officers could go if spending cuts to the force go ahead.
In sport, show no fear. That's a message from Giovanni van Bronckhorst as Rangers prepare for a tough test against Napoli.
And the global artists getting creative for a children's hospital. I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. Rishi Sunak made his first appearance in the House of Commons today since becoming Prime Minister. At Prime Minister's questions, he immediately came under pressure to sack his newly appointed Home Secretary and to call a general election.
This afternoon, he knocked back questions from the SNP about another independence referendum, but he's promising to work closely with the Scottish Government to respond to the economic challenges ahead. He spoke to the First Minister last night. Our Westminster editor, Catherine Sampson, reports.
He says he's determined, undaunted. Many in his party are simply relieved to see a new face making this journey to the dispatch box.
May I welcome the Prime Minister. The first British Asian Prime Minister is a significant moment in our national story.
Then came the questions and the calls for a general election.
The only time he ran in a competitive election, he got trounced by the former Prime Minister, who herself got beaten by a lettuce. So why doesn't he put it to the test, let working people have their say and call a general election?
He talks about mandates, about votes, about elections. It's a bit rich coming from the person who tried to overturn the biggest democratic vote in our country's history.
Rishi Sunak was asked why he'd reinstated a Home Secretary who had to resign last week for a security breach. Labour called it a grubby deal.
The Home Secretary made an error of judgment, but she recognised that. She raised the matter and she accepted her mistake.
Far from being a fresh start, this is a return to the sleaze and scandal and ghosts of cabinets past. The Prime Minister promised to govern with integrity and humility. So if he has an ounce of either, will he admit his mistake and sack the Home Secretary without the delay?
Mr. Speaker, I was pleased to actually have a call last night with the First Minister of Scotland. It was important that I spoke to her on my first day in office because I wanted to express my desire to work constructively with the Scottish Government so that we can work together to deliver for the people of Scotland.
But he'll continue to face questions about independence.
So if the Prime Minister's to maintain any credibility in the eyes of the people of Scotland, how long does he think he can deny Scotland's democracy?
He talked about respect. I would gently urge him to respect the result of the referendum we had.
Economic stability is Rishi Sunak's top concern. Today, the Chancellor confirmed a financial plan expected on Monday has been pushed back 2 weeks.
This is my recommendation to the Prime Minister as the best way to ensure that the decisions that we take, these very, very difficult decisions, are ones that stand the test of time and give us the best chance of giving people security over their mortgages, over their jobs.
Getting this right will be the key test for this new government.
Well, we're now joined by Catherine. And Catherine, another few weeks to wait for the financial plans. What more do we know?
Yes, we were, of course, expecting the plans on Halloween, on Monday. They're now going to come on November the 17th, and they're being upgraded into a full autumn statement. Now, while we're waiting for all this, we're going to see the Prime Minister and the Chancellor coming under more and more pressure about what exactly they are going to do. You know, today, Rishi Sunak faced questions about, for example, will benefits be uprated in line with inflation? He wouldn't confirm one way or the other. Now, Jeremy Hunt has been saying, look, I need to take time to get this right. He says he wants the most up-to-date forecasts. The Deputy First Minister of Scotland, though, John Swinney, says this delay is unwelcome, and he's also saying it could risk impacting the timing of the Scottish Government's own budget plans. As you heard, though, Rishi Sunak already taking quite a different approach towards a relationship with the Scottish Government. One of the first things he did last night, call the First Minister. She described those talks as constructive. You may remember Liz Truss didn't contact Nicola Sturgeon or her counterpart in Wales for the full 7 weeks she was in office.
OK, Catherine, from Westminster, thanks very much. The union Unison is suspending a ballot on industrial action by its 50,000 NHS workers. The union is putting the Scottish Government's £2,205 pay offer to members in a consultative vote.
The Royal College of Nursing is pressing ahead with a strike ballot of its members. It says people are avoiding using NHS services because of pressures on the system and long waiting times. Well, our political editor Colin Mackay has been following the story.
Well, first to that big news that Unison is suspending its strike ballot so that it can consult on what the Scottish Government is offering. What they're offering is £2,205 as a flat rate. That amounts to about 11% for the lowest paid health workers. Obviously, as you get higher up the pay scales, it's proportionately a lot less, but it's targeted at helping the lowest earners most there. Unite the Union tonight is recommending that its members vote against the pay offer, and the GMB union will meet tomorrow to discuss what's on offer. RCN members are also voting just now on industrial action, but they have a YouGov poll tonight which suggests that 42% of people, when questioned, said that they had avoided using NHS services over the last year to stop putting extra pressure on the system. 47% had avoided using those services because they didn't want to have to wait too long.
And Colin, a big row in Parliament this afternoon.
Absolutely, all this comes amid a fiery debate here in the Scottish Parliament, with opposition MSPs lining up to call for the Health Secretary to quit if he can't sort out the waiting times crisis in accident and emergency.
Our NHS is on its knees. The Health Secretary has a choice, because doing nothing is not a choice. He needs to stop people needlessly dying this winter. So his choice is set out a clear plan to end waiting times of more than 8 hours, because this is about saving lives, and if he can't do that, frankly, he must resign.
I'm not going to respond to some of those personal attacks, because it's a shame that a debate of such importance, such seriousness, has seen such pathetic, grubby personal attacks, not just on me but on members right across this chamber. It's a shame because it does no service whatsoever to our hard-working NHS staff who are working under incredible pressure.
Now, A&E services at the moment are suffering their worst waiting times ever. The Health Secretary puts that down to delayed discharge because of problems in the care sector further down the line. But the Health Secretary said in that debate this afternoon that the NHS is facing a very difficult winter. So is he.
Colin in the Scottish Parliament. Thank you.
Joined-up care for mental health and addiction issues must be made a greater priority. That's the plea from the brother of a man who died from an overdose, waiting for more support. This call comes as £65 million is to be channelled towards frontline services to improve immediate help for those dependent on drugs.
The Scottish Government says it's determined to make every penny count. Gavin Herron from Paisley believes the current system is broken for families struggling to keep their loved ones safe. Here's our chief reporter, Sharon Frew.
His family had been anxious about Evan Herron moving out, but they knew the 25-year-old needed to regain his independence. His parents had been helping him decorate his new home, dropping by every day with food.
10 days after moving in, he was found dead after overdosing on heroin that we believe was acquired by someone locally. The whole time you're asking the questions, what if, what can be done? It's truly the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. If obviously we had to wait for the toxicology report, we didn't know what to say. You're in the stage of, should we just say that he'd killed himself? Is that less shameful than saying that he died of a heroin overdose? It's not a position that anyone should be in. You should be able to tell somebody how somebody died without there being these meanings attached to that.
Evan's brother now wants to smash this stigma for others by speaking honestly about the reality of caring for a loved one with both mental health issues and drug addiction.
They're choked to death.
For years, Gavin says his loved ones lived a double life, shrouded in secrecy.
He's fun-loving, liked to be around people, liked to have a laugh. At times, a joy to be around, at times a nightmare. You sometimes would wake up, you wouldn't know what Evan you were going to get. I think there was points where Evan had a little bit more clarity that he wanted to maybe work out his addiction problems, the depression, anxiety, paranoia, the psychosis, made it very difficult for him.
A recent report from the Mental Welfare Commission found too many families in this situation are bounced between services, with GPs reporting difficulties in referring people for the right support, including at times of crisis. Gavin says his family found this demoralising and exhausting. Evan had been in need of psychiatric help since his late teens.
I think a lot of it was his mental health issues were requiring quite a large degree of self-medication. It was probably one of the only things that helped calm down the torture that was going on in his soul. You could have drugs dropped off behind your garden wall. Evan would go out during the night and there he'd just manage to source himself, say, 200 at Teaselam or another drug. My parents would try and restrict access to money, but then Evan would just get himself into debt with dealers and my parents would have to bail him out. There was one incident where a gang that Evan had owed money to arrived at the house and smashed up my dad's car.
At events across Scotland last month, relatives gathered to remember. Gavin says he grieves for his brother every day.
I would say the system is broken. Definitely joined up quicker care for both mental health and drug addiction. I think it's the main thing that needs to be done. It's impossible to divide the two. With Evan, it certainly wasn't.
The Scottish Government say a raft of improvements are underway, designed to lead to more joined-up care.
Although we do talk about the hard times, you try not to focus on that and you try and focus on the good that he provided our lives and how happy he made us and how much we miss him.
Sharon Frew, STV News.
Thousands of police officers and staff could be cut if Scottish Government spending plans go ahead. That's a warning from Police Scotland, who say no one wants to see it becoming a quasi-paramilitary force only able to deal with the most serious crimes.
Police chiefs warned failure to increase its budget, along with pay rises, would mean more than 4,000 jobs could go in the next 4 years. Stephen Brown reports.
The Queen's death and the journey of her coffin was a major national event, but also a large-scale police operation. It's one of a number in recent years in Scotland. But the police service has warned under current funding plans it will face cutting officers and staff in the coming years and would put further pressure on the force in the future.
The Scottish Police Federation, who are not here today but have submitted written evidence to us, they say that if the current plans come to fruition, crime will increase, victims will be let down, public confidence will diminish, and more people will be left in crisis. Indeed, many offenders will be unlikely to face any form of sanction or face any form of justice. Do you agree or disagree with that statement?
I think if you look at the experience in England and Wales, you'd have to agree with it. We're left with a choice of either no pay rises going forwards or a pay freeze effectively for officers and staff, or we fund it ourselves. We basically cannibalise policing to pay for policing.
The force says under Scottish Government plans it would get a flat cash settlement rather than in line with inflation, and if it gives pay rises of 5%, then it would face axing around 4,500 jobs by 2027. It warned it would mean tough choices, including possibly suspending the 101 service and delays in 999 calls being answered.
They will result in fewer police officers, they will result in fewer police stations, they will result in fewer police vehicles, they will result in longer response times, they will result in more crime and more victims of crime, and a greater loss of confidence in the police service, none of which anyone would think would be desirable.
You look at some of the big challenges, whether it's COVID, dealing with the pandemic, whether it's Operation Unicorn with the death of the Queen, or whether it was COP26, we've got a superb police force. We intend to keep it that way. I want to make sure that we protect, for example, you mentioned 999 and 101. These are some of the best services in the whole of the UK, so we want to protect those. But we also have to recognise that we have reduced resources, cut this year from the UK government, a massively increased rate of inflation which causes pressures, and we're going to have to deal with those challenges.
The fire service says while it will protect frontline services, it will also face cuts. The UK government says funding public services is largely devolved, and they're providing billions to the Scottish Government over the coming years. The next Scottish Government budget will be set in December. Stephen Brown, STV News.
Other stories across Scotland, and the second delayed ferry being built at the Ferguson shipyard may now serve the route to Arran. The Scottish Government has commissioned 2 new ships to serve the Hebrides, meaning Hull 802 could sail on the Ardrossan to Brodick route alongside the Glen Sannox.
Well, there are a number of options that we are exploring, but I'm really keen to explore these in conjunction with island communities. It's important as a government we listen to their needs, and certainly we have had conversations with island communities in relation to where new vessels might be deployed. We're looking at all available options, and I'll be speaking to island communities directly, as will my officials in Transport Scotland, about where these vessels might operate on.
And a police officer has been suspended following the alleged rape of another officer at a police college. The alleged incident happened at the Tullyallen training facility in Fife on the 14th of October. Police Scotland say an investigation was launched immediately.
Scotland's migratory birds now have a new task force looking after them and trying to work out why some species are disproportionately affected by bird flu.
It comes after tens of thousands of birds across the country were killed by the disease this summer, triggering biosecurity measures across the whole of Great Britain. Caroline Lewis reports.
When it comes, autumn brings with it many changes. And in Lochleven, the changes in the landscape also mark the arrival of thousands of visitors.
We get up to 80,000 birds at peak, which is about now. We get numbers like up to 25,000 pink-footed geese, about 15,000 tufted duck. It's really such an important site for a variety of water birds.
But the constant movement brings the bad with the good. And like many places in Scotland, bird flu has taken its toll.
It was hit quite hard during the summer, so we have a breeding population of lesser black-back and herring gulls on St Serph's Island, and about 850 young gulls were found dead on the island.
This year's outbreaks have been the worst the UK has ever seen, forcing poultry keepers to impose strict biosecurity measures, like Jane, who now has to meet her customers here, a mile from her farm. But she fears if the situation worsens, she'll have to completely lock down her birds.
It is a worry because it is increasing. We've got to make runs and cover over with mesh. It's not good keeping birds in confined spaces. It's pretty cruel.
Much of the research done so far has been on poultry, but in wild birds, some species seem to be disproportionately affected, and scientists don't know why. But a new task force fronted by Nature Scot is working to find out.
It's really difficult to try to model, to predict how that's going to move through the different populations, but is there things that we can do that might help them, might help slow down transmission? Is there things that we can do that might actually help them to survive a little bit better?
The team will be vigilantly studying Scotland's wintering populations over the coming months to try and combat what continues to be a rapidly changing crisis. Caroline Lewis, STV News.
A pensioner locked in a dispute with South Ayrshire Council over damage caused by damp in his home says he feels completely forgotten about and is living in a condemned area. Albert Brown from Ayr alleges council repair work on the outside of his flat has exacerbated the damage and is causing health problems. But the local authority says it's not its problem to fix. Here's Laura Alderman.
This is the corner that's the worst of the whole lot.
Every morning, pensioners Albert and Mary wake up to this, sprawling damp across their bedroom and living room, which Albert says grows every time it rains.
I'll cry sometimes.
It's horrible. You spend all your money trying to keep it the way you want it, and this happens.
Everybody that's seen it has told us the same thing. We shouldn't be living here.
Mary, who suffers from lupus, bought the property in Ayr more than 40 years ago.
This is where all the problems started, up here.
Albert says they've had issues with damp for years, but alleges the problem worsened after the council repaired parts of the roof and gutters last summer.
They'll never come to look at it. I mean, to me, that's wrong. On a very wet day, you see, it's a hose. You think it was a hose, water flying out onto the road. And that's where all the dampness is coming from. When you're at our age, to me, it's sad. I mean, we didn't ask for it.
He's adamant the council should provide a remedy, but South Ayrshire Council absolutely refute this. They say as the couple's home is privately owned, it's their responsibility to get it checked. They also said they're awaiting the results of a recent survey, and if there's any common repairs needed, they'll liaise with the couple further. But for now, the dispute continues and the damp only gets worse. Laura Alderman, STV News, Ayr.
Now Ronnie has the sport.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
A very good evening. Scott Arfield admits the Rangers dressing room has held what he describes as honest conversations in recent days after a run of disappointing performances. It comes as Rangers take on Napoli tonight in another huge Champions League tie. The Ibrox club sit bottom of their group, having failed to register a point. Manager Giovanni Van Bronckhorst says they must show no fear in Naples, even though they're facing a side in a brilliant run of form.
I think performances and results kind of speak for themselves. I think we've not been good enough, and that is the players. Ultimately, it's the players that go over the line and perform, and the performances haven't been good enough so far. And if you feel as if somebody's sort of no feeling the pressure or no feeling that they're pulling the weight, then that's the honest conversations that we've had, and we'll continue to do so to get back to what we're good at.
Of course, it's a team who are, I think, won the last 11 games against a really tough opposition as well in Champions League, but also in Serie A. So it's it's for us. It's we know the opposition, we know they have quality, but it's also a chance for us to have a good performance against a really good team like we did at home.
Rugby news, and Glasgow Warriors head coach Franco Smith says it's been a difficult week for the club after 32 players and staff became severely unwell whilst in South Africa. The virus meant their match against the Lions was postponed. Smith says everyone has returned home safely and hopes they can regroup ahead of their return to action this weekend.
We've got an opportunity to reset our bodies. I think that's the most important thing. We didn't push the guys too hard in this first couple of days, just to make sure that everybody's recovered properly and get proper integration. So and then obviously we're excited to play at home in front of our crowd.
Finally, Rangers have confirmed a statue of legendary manager Walter Smith will be built at Ibrox in tribute to his achievements 1 year on from his death. That's all your sport from me tonight, folks. Have a very good evening.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Now here's Sean with the weather.
Watch out for a sudden temperature drop. TUI Blue Hotels, sponsor STV Weather.
Well, wasn't that a horrible start to the day? Rain lashing down off the windows, gusty winds as well, but the cloud moved away to the north. Much sunnier skies following on behind. Is it here to stay? Well, I'm afraid not. Down to the bottom left of your screen, more cloud, another low pressure system, which is going to bring us yet more rain tomorrow. Now, for the time being, at least we get to enjoy that dry, clear weather through this evening tonight. It is staying rather breezy, quite windy across parts of the Hebrides, but the wind's actually easing down, though, as we go through the night. For most of us, those temperatures still on the very mild side, 12, 13 perhaps overnight in some spots, but we could get lows, especially across Stirlingshire, the Highlands, down to lows of about 6 or 7 degrees Celsius. Now, tomorrow morning, we've got the cloud coming in, outbreaks of rain, and I think it's probably through the first half of the day that we will see some heavier bursts of rain at times, but most of the rain tending to fizzle out a wee bit into the afternoon, especially on lower ground, but over higher ground we'll hang on to drizzle outbreaks of rain, misty weather throughout the day. Top temperatures still very, very mild, 16 degrees, even 17 possible in 1 or 2 spots. That's in the low 60s in Fahrenheit. Not what we would expect at this point in October. Now, on Friday, we start off with showers early in the day, but then it turns drier and brighter from the south. It's a reversal for Saturday. We start off dry and bright, more rain later on.
TUI Blue Hotels, sponsor STV Weather.
And finally, 150 artists from across the world are putting their colourful works under the hammer to raise funds for a children's hospital.
And for one of the artists involved, helping the Glasgow Children's Hospital charity didn't even need a moment's thought, has Fraser Nichols been finding out.
Decorating the walls of this Glasgow auction house, more than 200 artworks that will raise thousands of pounds for charity. The collection is attracting some of the industry's biggest names.
The art community are just a great bunch of people, very, very generous in their time and very generous in donating the works that you see around us. We've got artworks ranging from £30 to £40, right up to artworks that are in excess of several £1,000s, and hoping to raise a lot of money for a great cause.
James Klinger is one artist taking part. Born in Glasgow, the charity is a cause close to home and a cause close to his heart. His wife works as a paediatrician at the city's children's hospital, and their eldest son Joshua was treated there just before the pandemic.
The charity has just become something I've just become quite fond of to help out with. Love, nurture and emotion was really quite exciting to try and document in a series of paintings, and I was more than happy to donate an original piece.
I think for both of us it's important that no matter how successful James gets, is that you always can give back with that, and especially important because it is so close to home and a charity that's really important to both of us.
The money raised will make a massive difference to us. Glasgow Children's Hospital charity supports children and families who are in hospital. We fund life-changing projects, including family support services, enhanced medical equipment, and play and entertainment programmes, which make a real and vital difference to children and families who are in hospital.
The collection goes under the hammer on Friday. Fraser Nicholl, STV News, Glasgow.
All for a wonderful cause. Well, that's it from us tonight.
Rona will be here with Scotland tonight at 10:40 from all of us. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Good night.